lights and sirens, yeah, it's time to go, no time to defund us. You should know that we're not perfect, we're human, we're flawed. Just save us some grace for the sake of us all. We're holding that thin blue line, 'cause that's what we do. We don't do it for the glory, we do it for you.
Hello, Vax Choice and Clout Hub community. Thank you so much for joining us today for another episode of In the Lion's Den, hosted as always by Dr. Bill Lionberger. How are you doing today, Dr. Bill?
I'm doing very well, Melissa. We're into a brand new year and we're off to the races with so many things that are going on.
Yes. We do have one of our favorite reoccurring guests on today. Her name is Mary Fanning. If you aren't familiar with her, she is an investigative journalist, and she's the executive producer and host of the National Security Hour. She is co-author of multiple best-selling books and holds the honorary rank of colonel for her work and service to America. A new guest that we have on today is Dan Happel. Dan is a fourth-generation Montanan. He's a retired businessman, rancher, and lifelong defender of liberty, from serving as a U.S. Army architect in Washington, D.C., to building successful construction firms across 11 states and shaping policy, forestry stewardship, and constitutional education in Montana. Dan's life reflects service, leadership, and deep-rooted American values. A national trusted advisor on issues of freedom, property rights, and constitutional law. Dan brings clarity, courage, and hard-earned wisdom to some of the most critical conversations of our time. So we've got some good guests to give some opinions on the current events going on. And I look forward to hearing it, Dr. Bill. I'll be in the background enjoying this show, and I'll come back at the end for questions.
Excellent. So welcome to In the Lion's Den. Today's show is the dark web of nations. And it's said that way because so many things are at play around the world and around the country that bear shining the light of day on that. Our show today is going to be looking at many diverse subjects, not only domestic but foreign. And with that, I'd like to bring on our special guests today, Mary Fanning and Dan Happel.
Welcome. Nice to be with you, Doc Bill.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Bill. I'm pleased to be with you. I look forward to the conversation.
Well, welcome to you both. We have so much kicking off today that the thing that comes to mind for me is an unprecedented number of, I would call a tsunami level of events happening. Foreign, domestic, we've got all of the issues where, the Dems are fueling insurgency and insurrection and domestic violence against ICE. We've got that kicking off everywhere when they're trying to do their job, actually trying to catch up from what was done for many years flooding this country. And then we go all the way over to Iran, where, the populace would like to overthrow the government. The government owns the big guns and it's deadly. And maybe we start with that. Maybe we have Mary weigh in a little bit on the whole Iranian crisis, where Trump is saying, they're crossing a red line and he's going to do something, right? What are your thoughts, Mary?
Well, it's a humanitarian moment in time as they're assassinating, terrorizing. Anyone who's looked at some of the things that have taken place there, where a young girl stood up to protest what they were doing to the people in Iran and taking their freedom, and they brought her to prison to rape her to death. This is something that is beyond the pale, that cannot be tolerated. And so, fortunately, we have a president who will no longer stand for this garbage or work in concert to be paid off for these things, much like Jimmy Carter did. People have no idea of who and what Jimmy Carter really was and the part he played in the fall of Iran and handing it over to the mullahs. And so Trump is now countering what these demons are doing, what they're doing to their people. And I think part of that, in the context of what is taking place, what Trump is doing with implementing the Monroe Doctrine, so much so that people are now calling it the Monroe Doctrine. So that was established in order to counter Russia and China, who both play a big part in Iran. So Trump as he took down Venezuela, he gave warnings. And if you heard Pete Hegseth, FAFO. If you mess with the United States, you will find out what takes place next. So he is threatening Iran. He's about to give a statement from the White House on what they are doing. And it's for the first time we're taking back our power, our hegemonic and hemispheric dominance. We're no longer standing down to terrorist states who threaten us with nuclear weapons. Trump went in there with precision. He took out their nuclear weapons. If they have more, FAFO. You're fooling with the wrong guy.
A lot of undoing to do, because we had been dealing with the military side. Now we're dealing with civilian side over there, and their war crimes and worse, just shooting their own people. I mean, I just try to wrap my head around, let's see, these officers that, or these people that work for the military go home at night and live in those communities, you would think, and now they're shooting their own people. It's just unconscionable. I'm hearing thousands have been killed. There was a whole bunch of them that were arrested that are going to be on, basically ready to be hung. You can't make up how bad and how awful that is. And somewhere along the line, somebody's got to step in and help to put a stop to it. You'd think we would have support from around the world. Where's that? Where's the UN, right?
Well, we know what the UN is, Dr. Bill. If you're looking for a leadership, that's the last place you're going to want to look. But the fact is, we've been living through in the United States 125 years of progressive leadership, and frankly, it's done so much damage to this country and to our basic institutions of freedom, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the legal system. I mean, you go right through the list. We've done a lot of damage to our own country through bad leadership for a very long time. And I think for the first time in a long time, Trump is stepping forward. Ronald Reagan did it to a lesser extent, but Donald Trump is stepping forward, expressing a lot of the things that we should have been expressing 30, 40 years ago. I hope it's not too late to stop this freight train, but all I can say is what's going on right now in Iran is it's a populist revolution. And I think Donald Trump and several other leaders have really created a populist movement that we're finally starting to get some traction. And I'm just hoping that this takes off all over the world and in a very positive way, because we've been under oppressive government worldwide for a very, very, very long time.
Well, we have a constitution that guarantees our right to bear arms. I'm thinking there, everybody carries arms, but at the end of the day, you can't match the military. So it's going to take another military to come in and, strike them down on some level to basically stop the killing. But there's a lot of other geopolitical issues at stake with Iran. Especially we're talking about oil coming out of Venezuela, right? And maybe all the way up to what we're trying to do potentially in Greenland that have impacts around the world, especially for security. What's the bigger, Mary? What's the bigger picture here that is in play besides the rebellion?
In Iran, it's interesting with what Trump went into Venezuela, not to conquer it, but to put it back where it's not under communist rule and to bring peace and prosperity. But so he took control of their oil and some say their rare earth minerals as well. And he said, we will manage this. we will take part of the profits and you will get part of the profits. So he's putting them in order where the country is working for the people once again instead of a communist hellhole. And at the same time, he was taking over their oil and different kinds of oil that are important to us and to China, etc. And he's removing that from China, but he's also now talking about Iran, and he's going to close down their oil. And that is going to put Iran on a footing where they no longer, excuse me, China on a footing where they no longer feel so secure, threatening nuclear war against the United States, and that they've come in and raided our hemisphere and have done everything they could to take over South America. That is part of our belief system that this is our hemisphere and you stay out of it. And China has done everything they could. This is part of their unrestricted warfare plan to take over and destroy the United States. And when people understand who China is and what their belief system is, if you simply look what they've done to the Uyghurs in China, that the Chinese Communist Party collects these people, keeps them alive while they're taking out their organs, and then turns their bodies into prison food. And that is who is attempting to take over this country. We know how many of our officials were paid off by them or sleeping with Chinese spies. And you just had to look at some of our senators who had a Chinese spy as her chauffeur for years. In what world is this okay that we have our government officials, Democrats, being paid off by the enemy to have access to and control over the United States and our government officials?
Well, basically,
Well, and,
go ahead.
no, I was going to say, and Mary too. Right now, we are facing an economic tsunami that's coming our way through the BRICS nations and their attempts to take out the United States as the world's reserve currency. And we see that in our markets. We see that in our stock markets. We see it in our bond markets, and now we're seeing it in the precious metals markets.
Yeah, Dan, there's a Lenin quote that I like to remind people. Vladimir Lenin said, "He who owns the light bulb implements communism. So he who owns the energy controls all." And it's important to keep that in mind as China and the BRICS are attempting to control energy across the globe and also to destroy the petrodollar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not surprising that the Chinese are leading the parade when it comes to Agenda 21 2030 and this so-called green technology. They are the primary producer of solar panels and some of these other things, but at the same time, they don't have to abide by the same regulations that the rest of the developed world has to. They're given a free pass. They have a new coal-fired plant coming on. I'm not sure it's the same as it was, but several years ago, it was to the tune of one a week that were coming online, and yet all the eco nuts in this country were screaming about America burning dirty coal. Well, we had much cleaner coal-fired plants than the Chinese ever thought of having. But see, that's the way it works. You give the communists, give the collectivists a free pass, and then you hold everybody else accountable.
Yeah, to the regulations that you're supposed to follow. Understand that they have slave labor in China, something that we don't have. Understand that their number one talent is stealing data, information from the United States. The amount of people that they've brought into this country, be it under the Confucius Institutes, where they're all over our campuses, or into Fort Detrick, the CDC. We just have had a naval was just arrested for giving information to the Chinese. The infiltration into the United States is great, and I really like what Pete Hegseth is doing. He's no longer playing ball and letting all this take place. But understand that when we had COVID and we first reported, and from the very beginnings of COVID, we knew that the Chinese were in our blood labs. We knew that they were at Fort Detrick. They were getting bioweapons. They're working out of Ukraine where the bio labs are. Thank you, Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden, who had not only infiltrated our government, was selling us out. The Biden's receiving $1.5 billion from the Chinese. Hunter Biden having an illegal encrypted email account out of the Pentagon while he's sending information to our adversaries, selling us out. The only thing I find confusing today is why these people like Fauci and the Bidens and Obama are still walking and talking.
It seems to me also, though, that, China plays, like to say, the long game, right? They infiltrate, they continue to like make headway in as quiet in a way that they can so that they eventually gain the momentum to control an area. But look at how fast the tide just changed in Venezuela, and all of a sudden, all of their aspirations now in Venezuela are not going to work out the way they probably planned. And looking at the same, thing, like maybe even Cuba, or maybe Mexico, where we begin, like he said, we begin to take charge of our side of the hemisphere, and we do it in ways that gets it done. So we take out years and years of planning, and all of a sudden set them back in ways, but we still have them infiltrated all over the country, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, this is something that hasn't been brought up a lot by the mainstream media, but the World Court decided a judgment against Venezuela, $38 billion that were supposed to be paid to the oil companies as reparations for when they nationalized the oil industry in Venezuela. They've never paid a dime of that. And that's exactly what Trump is talking about, is holding them accountable. Since they won't pay it, he's going to basically make it where they have to pay it because it'll come out of the ground. It's got to, and the only way that's going to happen is if American companies go back in, because the infrastructure in Venezuela in the oil industry is worse than it was 60 years ago. I mean, it's just fallen apart, and it does that under communism.
Yeah. It seems also like, the people talk about, well, why didn't Trump just go in and replace, all of the cabinet and all the people in the government? And it's like, you don't really understand how things work. If you want an element for disaster, that's probably it. You don't want a power vacuum. You actually probably want to manage and control what's there so you can assess what needs to happen and not, because it's probably pretty fluid. So it makes sense the way that they're doing it, taking out the head of the snake and then figure out, how you deal with the rest of it, because the cartels still are firmly, seated and rooted over there. And they're going to have to be dealt with, because you're not going to be able to get oil out of the ground and manage that without managing the bad elements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doc Bill, one of the things is the United States still has legal standing to recoup the $1.6 trillion debt that China owes America. And this has gone on, and the UK finally collected on that debt in the late 1980s. China still owes that money to us, 1.6 trillion, plus, of course, that was in gold. And so you can imagine how much China has then, as they've come in and infiltrated the country, um, and that is all laid out in unrestricted warfare. So when they told us that they were coming to take us, to kill us, when people tell you they're going to kill you, believe them. And so as they were coming to take the country, and they said that they wanted to kill 9 out of every 10 Americans, don't doubt that they mean this. They say in unrestricted warfare and in General Chi Tian's speech that they own this country, that they founded it themselves. So it is time for us to stop them. One of the things that we should be doing is taking back Smithfield ham. They should not have access to the pork business in the United States. They should not have ownership to that. It's time to start, if we had anyone who wasn't dirty and that went after China, some of this would have taken place. But no, you were never going to see this under dirty Joe Biden. You were never going to see it under Obama, for Pete's sake, and certainly not even before him, Clinton and the Bushes.
Yeah, the
Dan,
globalists have been in charge, Dr. Bill. The globalists have been in charge of this whole program. And I hate to say it, but we all know this. The rhino establishment of the Republican Party, a lot of people refer to them as neocons, but they're actually crony capitalists, and some people would call them corporate fascists. Either one of those seem to work. But the fact is, the Rockefeller establishment, which was huge throughout the 20th century, are the ones that normalized relations with communist China in the first place. And the reason they did that is because they stood to make a lot of money with it. And a lot of people don't know this, but Henry Kissinger was the personal secretary for Nelson Rockefeller in 1960. So the Rockefellers and our international foreign policy have been intertwined for the past 60 or 70 years. In fact, it goes back really to John D., which is much earlier than that. So we can't help but have to face the fact that a lot of our wounds are self-inflicted, but they're self-inflicted from people that don't have the best interests of our constitutional republic at heart, and that includes both parties in the establishment wing.
And most particularly Henry Kissinger.
Yeah.
Henry Kissinger was a double agent, according to Christopher Story and his book, The New Underworld Order. And Golitsyn, they exposed Henry Kissinger as a Soviet agent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you don't believe that, then you should really look at what Henry Kissinger did, opening up trade and equalizing China to the United States.
And the whole New World Order. I mean, he was one of the founders and one of the keystone members of the World Economic Forum. And I'm sure everybody remembers Klaus Schwab saying, "You will own nothing and you will be happy." Well, guess what? That isn't the American dream. That's the Marxist dream.
And Dan, I dare say, look at Klaus Schwab's number one guy, Yuval Harari. If you know nothing, simply go and listen to Yuval Harari and look at him, listen to what he says, and if your skin isn't crawling,
Yeah.
then you're missing something. When he says you will own nothing and you will be happy, look what Trump just did with what he did with housing, saying that the corporate world cannot come in and keep buying housing in the United States. It's for the people, not to create some Soviet architecture here where you answer to someone else that the American people don't have the right to accomplish the American dream, which is to have their families and to have their own home. And all that began with the destruction of the housing market in 2007. That collapse was with purpose.
Well, and Mary, something else, and that is coming out of all this is the credit card companies. Trump is going to insist that the credit card companies start end this unfair usury and start a maximum at 10% interest on credit cards. And if in fact that goes through, I've heard, well, that'll keep a lot of people from being able to have credit cards. Well, duh. A lot of people shouldn't have credit cards. If you can't maintain your credit and you can't pay your bills, why in the world should the rest of us have to pay for that? It's I've got almost perfect credit score, and I can tell you right now, my credit cards, if I didn't pay them off every month, they'd be around 20, anywhere from 25 to 30%. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah. We've never not paid off our credit cards.
Hmm.
You know, part of it is we're bringing in a dysgenic group of people into this country, and they're feeding off of the country. They're not bringing anything to it. They are not creating anything. All they are pirates, like the Somalis. They're simply here like a virus to feed off of us.
Hmm.
They're not giving anything. And the fact that they brought all these people in, particularly Omar, she came here illegally. She claimed to be married to her brother, which in fact she may have been, and that may have been her husband in real terms. She lied about her age, changed the documentation. She needs to be picked up and arrested. The fact that this person is a representative in our government is unacceptable. She really, truly, she was on the ground now in Minneapolis, encouraging violence. Arrest Ilhan Omar. Either put her in prison or deport her. Take her over her country, give her a parachute. She and her father are part of what took place in Somalia, Black Hawk Down. She never should have stepped foot on our soil.
Well, and Mary, look at what's going on now in Minnesota. That's proof positive. Minnesota is a beautiful state, and it's got a lot of great people, a lot of very, very good fundamental Christians, constitutionalist people who believe in this country. But the cancer has been absolutely eating that state up for the last 20 years. And guess who are right in the middle of that?
All the communist Dems and the
Yeah.
Somalis. And you know what just took place there with Renee? This, this woman made the mistake of her life. To when a police officer tells you get out of the car, first she pulls over and stops traffic. He tells her on 4 occasions, get out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the effing car, get out of the car. And then she pulls into him, and he's heard on camera saying, whoa, as she pulls into him to run him over. This idea that this woman thought she had the right to do this, and that her lesbian wife was telling Renee Good to drive, baby, drive. Renee Good was a paid agitator. She was working with a group called Ice Watch, which was giving directions to these activists. They want violence. They want ICE officers killed. They want the communist revolution to get underway.
Yeah, yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I think we take a look at the history of this whole thing. It's pretty fascinating. We had Ronald Reagan, but then George Herbert Walker Bush was his vice president. He was personally installed by the Rockefeller Trust, and basically they told Ronald Reagan, we're going to support Jimmy Carter if you don't accept George Herbert Walker Bush as your vice president. So Reagan acquiesced to that. And frankly, I think Nancy didn't want any part of that. But Reagan acquiesced to it. Well, guess what? Right after he's sworn in as president, within 60 days, there's an assassination attempt that almost takes him out. That is absolutely the footprint of those who want to replace good leaders with leaders that they can control. And if you take a look at George Herbert Walker Bush, he was a globalist. There's no question. His family were globalists. Prescott Bush was a globalist. They had a whole line of globalists, and the bottom line is he's the one that opined about the New World Order. We have had now 40 years, or certainly 35 years of progressives in place, and until we had Trump. And what did that do? Well, that pretty much changed the complexion of the country. As Obama said, they were fundamentally transforming this country. Well, that fundamental transformation was changing us from a constitutional republic to a Marxist technocracy. And that fundamental change was almost accomplished. But lo and behold, Donald Trump, this guy comes down the escalator and says, I'm kind of a populist. I'm going to go ahead and run for president. And even though the establishment had everybody else of the Republican Party in front of him, they couldn't out campaign him. He did a much better job of campaigning. So they put him in place. He becomes is sworn in as president. They spend the next 4 years trying to destroy the man and take away his presidency. And then after the 2000 election, they steal the election so they can get the country back and put it back in China Joe Biden's hands. And we know who was running Biden. It wasn't Biden wasn't running the White House. Obama was. That's why I always refer to him as old Biden. And then they couldn't cheat bad enough because of all the things that had happened in the popular uprising in the United States. They couldn't stop Trump from coming back in. I'm telling you, they are absolutely screaming right now and squirming because the New World Order stands a damn good chance of being stopped dead in its tracks. And they are really afraid of that because the New World Order is a one world government, a technocracy controlled by a handful of people. And that's what they want. And they'll do anything to get it.
You're spot on, Dan. It is the bankers' cabal that is taking over the United States, that has been working to destroy this country really since 1773 in a silversmith shop in Frankfurt. This has been going on since our inception.
Yeah,
it has. Mary, I wanted to step back for a minute. You mentioned something about Renee Good, and there's something that's important to understand. Working in law enforcement and understanding how the law really works. When that officer perceived the threat, there are options for him. But the first one is he doesn't have to be hit. If he perceives that vehicle is coming at him, and then he perceives the threat, but it hasn't hit him, he still has the choice to make to defend himself. And that can include lethal force. The fact that she did hit him takes it to the next level and fully justifies that. But again, if I'm out on the street and the car's aiming toward me and I can't get out of the way, it's faster than me, and it looks like it's going to run me over, I have the ability to try to defend myself as an officer and deal with that threat before it hits me. The public and the general public seems to, want to say, well, he could have got out of the way and he could have been this and that. But the reality is that we just have to perceive that lethal threat. It's like somebody coming at me with a knife. You can cross a 20-foot distance in, less than 2 seconds with a knife. Do you have to be on me and, stabbing me with that knife? No. But if you're coming at me in that time frame, do I have the ability to defend myself? Absolutely. It's the same kind of doctrine. So I just wanted to kind of step back for a minute and bring in a little bit more clarity, because people don't tend to know that you can defend yourself without having to get run over. You know what I mean?
Well, he could have been killed.
Right.
They're sending people out. This Ice Watch group is to direct these violent people to achieve exactly what happened. They don't care if this woman got run over and killed. They don't care that her wife told her, when the police told her to stop 4 times, to step out of the car, that she then inserted herself and said, "Drive, baby, drive," shows their intent to break the law. But she knew that she pointed that vehicle to hit the cop. He's right in front of her when she tells her to drive. There's no question of her intent, what she did. Did she think she'd end up getting shot in the head? Maybe not. But who are the people behind this that are sending these these violent people out there who think they're going to become important by getting involved in this. This is a group of dysgenic people that have nothing else to do in this country. And so they're taking their bad genes on the road.
And it's not, Mary, organic. These people are being
No.
paid just like, the Fedsurrection, right? You had a couple of hundred, we're learning now, people in the group that were there to create that whole scene that was mislabeled from start to finish. But these people are being paid to do this. They show up with training, they show up with equipment, they show up prepared to try to make a statement and make as much noise as they can, and they're not getting paid enough to get shot. But they're not smart enough apparently to get that, right? They're getting peppered in the face, and other because they're basically impeding, lawful law enforcement jobs. And whether ICE wants to bring in 100, 500, 1,000, 2,000, that's up to them. It's not your job to try to get out there and get in the way of it, because that's exactly what you're going to do. That's not lawful. And so it's one thing to,
Well,
stand up for your right to speak out. It's another.
well,
Stand up for your right to speak out. It's another thing to get in the way of an activity, and then you've crossed that line. So they want to continue to create this sort of anarchy as much as they can. What does it do? Take your eye off the prize. So we're not looking at other things like we should be or could be. You've got all of the media that can't wait, and they're just salivating to get all this stuff, these B-rolls or whatever going all over, that side of the media. For what? For something other than you seeing what's really going on. And one of those things, and I wanted to ask Dan, has to do with the money, because there's a big shift coming. We've seen what today is like close to record gold prices, right, Dan? We're seeing, the whole Jerome Powell, controversy. Go, well, let's just wait till the end of his term. Well, how much damage does it do to the country to hold back what Trump's basically economic boom, if you will, in a lot of ways? You continue to hold back the housing market because you won't adjust the rates enough to get people moving. I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, right now what's going on is literally open civil war. We've been in a civil war for the last probably 10 years, and it's getting out of hand right now. But the fact is, people say, well, why would they want to do that? Why would they want all this death and destruction? Why are we having all the things happen internationally? We look at Ukraine, we look at Gaza, we look at the Middle East, death and destruction all over. Well, keep in mind that the UN, in their wisdom, and the Biodiversity Treaty says we've got to have fewer than 1 billion people. They think life is very expendable. And how's the best way to get a strong country like the United States to basically down on its knees and put an end to this country as a republic? Take away their money and destroy their financial system. And that's happening right now in this country. We've got to recognize it. Frankly, part of that is because we have been very irresponsible. We borrow. But I think Trump is now trying to do something about that. And from what I'm hearing from sources very close to Trump, he's trying to get us back on a sound financial system, and doing that however he can. And gold and silver are going to be part of that equation.
It looks like it's been artificially held down for a long time. And then now it's having these large growth spurts that you didn't see before, and then it's held again. Where do you see this going? I mean, how high do you think that this financial, how high do you think gold and metals are going to go based on this overview?
Well, on reality, I'm going to throw out some numbers here, but the fact is, if you're based on M2 money supply, which is the money supply in circulation in bills and in checkbook credit, at a bare minimum, we should be around $35,000 to $37,000 gold. Well, if we've got to do something, because right now our financial system is totally fiat. Richard Nixon did that in 1971, and incidentally, that was also the Rockefellers wanted to get rid of any connection to gold, because the Rockefellers are part of the fiat banking cabal that's been
Right.
running this country for 120 years, 110 years, 112 years. But the bottom line is, you take a look at what's going on in silver right now. Silver's at $91 today. Uh, that's only a tip of what it really is worth. You're absolutely right, Dr. Bill. They've held down. Incidentally, J.P. Morgan Bank has been one of the ones that have been holding the COMEX at bay through all the short selling, and I can't get into describing all that. It would take too much to do that. But right now, gold is coming out of the ground, and silver is coming out at a ratio of 7 times as much silver as there is gold coming out of the ground. We've been as high as 120 to 1 gold to silver ratio. Right now, we're a little over 50 to 1 gold to silver ratio. If we were at 7 to 1 with the gold silver ratio, or let's just say 10 to 1. Let's leave a little latitude there. And gold right now at $4,600. That means $460 silver. That's how bad the suppression has been. And if we're at $30,000 gold and we're at 10 to 1, that means $3,000 silver. People have no idea how little silver we have and how quickly it's disappearing because of technology. We mine roughly 800 million ounces of silver per year. And we're running a deficit of over 130 million ounces of silver every year, and we've been doing that for 6 years. We've been so artificially suppressed on silver. I don't even think we've seen the tip of the iceberg, Dr. Bill. I think honestly this year we could see in 2026, I think we're going to see probably close to $200 silver, and it very easily could end up going to the mid 3 digits within the next 2 or 3 years. And I think in the long run, we're going to be looking at triple, quadruple digit silver at some point within the next 5 years. I really believe that. And it's just based on, how much we bring out of the ground and how much we use.
I couldn't
And
agree
this is,
more, Dan. And I think people have to put it in context of the chip business and how important chips are to our economy going forward. When you think about that, you should also consider what Joe Biden made sure that they handed over Bagram to the Chinese in Afghanistan, Bagram Air Base, so that we did not have the capability to keep China from taking Taiwan.
I thought about Mary. Have they put plans together to take Bagram back? Because we have the ability to. They gave away the equipment, all the things that relate to that. But what if we actually took it back in this administration? I had another question for you, Dan. This whole Green New Deal, right? That seems to, from the very beginning, I've never believed for a minute about any of this green stuff at all. It seems to be more of a money grab. The NGOs spending money, having all these backdoors for that money to come back to legislators and others in the country. Yes, we've been unraveling it with Doge. Your thoughts on how we're shutting that down and taking it to task and where we go from here?
Well, I'm really excited. First of all, it looks like Donald Trump is actually playing with the idea in very strong terms of getting us out of the UN. We should never have been in the UN. A lot of people don't know this, but if you go back and look at the roots of the UN, they are red, very red. The UN Charter of Human Rights is literally word for word the same as the 1936 Soviet Constitution. When we had the meetings that put together the UN in San Francisco, we had literally a dozen communists of the 15 members that were present. A dozen of them were card-carrying communists. It was proven later with the exposés that came out after the fall of the Soviet Union. So let's start with that. The whole UN Charter thing is based on Marxism. Well, the Biodiversity Treaty and UN Agenda 21, which is now morphed into UN 2030 and so-called Green New Deal. It's only green for those who have their hands in the bucket.
Yes.
The rest of us are getting screwed. But it's part of a plan to literally destroy property rights in the United States and anywhere else in the world where private property is considered a right. They plan, and that's where Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and the UN groups all come in, because they all say private property is not a human right. Private property is wrong. We should have nothing but community property to own everything. Well, we know how successful communism has been. It's not been successful anywhere, and I say that when you look at communist China, the only way they've ever made their communist system successful is by allowing huge inroads into the capitalist system. I think there are some dummies in this country that thought that would actually make communism implode in China, but they didn't take the personalities of the communist leaders into account when they did that. But anyway, bottom line is the Green New Deal is really what I call the watermelon deal. It's green on the outside and red in the middle. It's all about getting communist ideas established worldwide and using something that scares the hell out of young people. They can convince these young people that the world is dying because of human activity. The young people get afraid, then they can control young people. They can get young people to accept communism. Look today at the United States and how many young people accept socialism. It's in the neighborhood right now of 80% of all young people that they polled believe that communism and socialism is fine, and that only leaves 20% that are going to support the Constitution. That's how they did it. They steal our young people's minds. They get them to believe in things that are complete crap. And the Green New Deal is the biggest part of that crap incision into the United States.
And Dan, they bring in immigrants from communist countries who readily accept it. And that has been part of their plan since the get-go, bringing all these illegals into our country, where they come in and do nothing, bring nothing except the ability to steal from us.
Mhm.
Understand that all those USAID dollars were your tax dollars laundered through NGOs, where they steal a nice amount of it, that we were actually paying for Soros to give our money away to create the violence in this country.
Mhm.
It is just that simple.
Well, and Mary and Dr. Bill, you brought something really important up. That's NGOs, so-called nonprofits. We have a fourth branch of government right now that is totally unconstitutional, and that is special interests and non-governmental organizations. They literally control Congress, and they control most of the administrative branch of all the various agencies. That's the swamp that Donald Trump has been trying to get rid of. the NGOs and the special interests that control the administrative branch.
Including those who work for us, who came in there as paupers, had created nothing, and now a bartender who was twerking on roofs for a living is now has pocketed $30 million in this short amount of time.
Yeah.
Those are stolen tax dollars.
Well, and I did a newsletter that went out just a couple of days ago, but I was talking about the hypocrisy of the left. Isn't it interesting? Al Gore is the head of all this green crap going on, and he's the one that warned that the United States, well, the world would experience a 20-foot sea rise by the end of the century, and that it would be like 30 or not 30 foot, 15 foot by 2050. Yet he owns all these beach properties, and the same with Obama and Michelle, or Michael as we like to refer him, have beachfront property on Martha's Vineyard. If it's so scary and they think that the water levels are going to rise that much, why would they be investing their own money in real estate on those beaches?
And Dan, they've known forever that global warming is a fraud.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
Climate change, the global warming was all a boondoggle.
It's a boondoggle. And you now even have Bill Gates admitting it. And the only reason he's admitting it is because now they want to give you more vaccinations and more chips into your body.
Well, that's a big subject. I wanted to segue for a minute over to some Q&A. We've covered a lot of landscape here at the beginning of the year in one of our first shows of the year, and really a lot of ground. But I wanted to weigh in with some questions. How you doing, Melissa?
Doing good. Very interesting show, covering a large spectrum of topics. But there's a couple things that I would like to ask specifically is, since we've lost so much time with the Republican-controlled House and Senate with the lockdown, what needs to happen next to move the Republic restoration forward?
Just what Trump is doing. He's securing the hemisphere. He's revitalizing trade. He's bringing the means of production back into the country. And he's no longer letting the corporate structures buy all the housing.
And I'm going to say something here that I think is really important. We need to bring Jesus back to the Republican Party.
Boy.
We have the Republican Party has turned into the neocon party, whether we want to admit it or not. And I think the reason that Trump gained so much power and so much popularity is because he really was at odds with the Republican Party. Most of the establishment hated him. And so what we need to do, we either need to start voting for candidates, and we need to put the big R back in the Republican Party and not Rhino. We need to put the Republican Party back on the right track. And we've got some great people in the Republican Party. We need to get more of them, and we need to strengthen the Republican Party. And the only way that's going to happen is if we get great candidates and get a lot of people behind them in these midterm elections and campaign.
And what about term limits? I mean, if we had term limits and we made it so that they couldn't get paid by these NGOs, the incentive for them to go round and around and around, take that money and then never ever represent the populace shifts, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that I am personally in favor of term limits. We've got them in Montana. There are a lot of states that do have term limits, and I'm in favor. They say, well, gee, we've got some good ones that would sure like to keep them there. Well, what do you call a good one? Lindsey Graham? I don't think so. So
Dan,
All
I
I
think you're right about God, bringing God back into our country and putting these people in context. How many people understand Barack Hussein Obama and his transformation, his father or mentor, whatever he is, probably both, and the fact that Frank Marshall Davis was one of the founders of NAMBLA, the National Man Boy Love Association,
Yeah, I
from the
think
perverts.
I think the United States, Mary, I think the United States is so much more conservative than people realize. If we actually went back to paper ballots, hand counted at the precinct level, and got
Yeah.
our elections back, I think
Yeah.
you'd find out the conservatives would win every time on a landslide.
Hands down, they're at least 70%. And understand that what we've just gone through under Obama comes directly under the Modernization Act of 2012, where he made it legal to run a psyops, to lie to the American people, for the legacy media to be purveyors of lies. It's
Mhm.
all a psyop.
Well, I think that Trump's asymmetrical warfare, especially taking out the head in Venezuela and getting inroads into Smartmatic and these illegal, it should be illegal, voting machines, begins the process. And then I've heard rumblings that he was talking about writing an executive order that everything had to be paper ballots. Have you heard much about that?
That's what we're working on, and that's where we hope it's going. But understand something that's very important. So while we talk about Smartmatic and Dominion, and this all goes to Lord Mark Malloch Brown and Soros, Open Society, but also it comes out of ESNS and the technology from ESNS in 2010 under a forced divestiture by Obama and Holder and the DOJ. The ESNS technology was given to Dominion and Serbia. I mean, they think they're covering their tails by working out of other nation states. They're not. They're dirty. We've got them, and we have the proof of what they did. And we had it in 2020, and then they ran their Fedsurrection to close down the Fedsurrection. There was no tear gas. That was BS. What there was election interference, so they could never get to the electoral college vote for them to confirm the votes by state.
Melissa, do you have another question?
Yes. So, Dan, I guess this is more directed at you, is what do you think is being done differently in traditionally conservative states like Montana that you think other states should adapt or get as well?
Well, I wish I could say that Montana was a conservative state. Actually, we are in name only, but the fact is, what's happening is the states like California, Washington, different states that are very liberal are exporting their liberalism to all the conservative states, and they're throwing a lot of money into those states. A recent election is a perfect example. John Tester and Sheehy, they ran in direct opposition to each other, but outside party members brought 80, now think of this, $80 million into the state of Montana for a senatorial election behind John Tester, to support John Tester. Now, Sheehy, our senator now, who I think he's a pretty good guy, I really do. He hadn't been in Washington long enough to turn into a pond creature, but I think she had like $40 million in his campaign. How in the world in a state like Montana, we've got 1 million people. That means they spent $80. The Democrats spent $80 per person campaigning in Montana. That's how they do it. They throw money at this stuff, and yet they say at the same time that the conservatives are the ones with all the money. No, it doesn't work that way.
And don't forget that
There's
they spend money on the judges and the
Oh,
legal
they,
system to totally control that.
yep.
Dr. Bill, look at what we were just learning, that there are foreigners that are judges in this country.
Yeah.
Foreigners.
Mhm.
And recently they've talked about, some different, officers that made it all the way through, the academy and all the background checks, but they were not legal. How did that work? Right. One final question, Melissa.
Yes. So let me see here. We know that, Trump can only do so much in this term, since, there was the break in the middle and having to basically rebuild everything Biden and Obama knocked down. What do you think we should be looking for in a potential leader for the 2028 election?
I'll say that they should be looking for Trump having another term. They stole his term. These are not continuous terms. And we're watching Bolshevik 2.0 play out right now. They're looking to take down our country. And at least if we have a team that knows how to fight back, we should keep it in place. And the more we expose Obama and Biden and the Democrats, they want insurrection, they want violence, they want deadly responses, they want to take down this country. And the American people are going to have to stand up and stand up against Bolshevik 2.0. They're using our own monies to defeat us.
Yeah, and not only that, but we need to hold people accountable. The American people are ready to see some of these people that did these things held accountable. And if we've got leadership that is willing to do that and stands by that, I think they would have huge popular support in the next general election.
Final thoughts, Mary.
Time to take down the CIA. JFK was right into a million pieces. Everything that they have done, they have been running this country since John F. Kennedy was assassinated. It's time to take it back. And also, there was another thing that JFK, and Dan's well aware, get rid of the Federal Reserve. It is neither federal nor a reserve. It is a bankers' cabal raping this country daily.
Yeah, I think Mary sold my thunder there.
Sorry.
We've got to get rid of the Federal Reserve. We've got to go back to a sound money system. We need to get our country back. We cannot do it by little fits and starts. We need to hold people accountable, and we need to take our money, our monetary system back. And I think all the federal administrative agencies need a thorough house cleaning. If you don't believe in the Constitution of the United States and you don't believe in our basic principles, you have no business being a head of an agency.
And there should be no dual citizenship.
Taking the oath of office on the Quran, right? Boy, who would have thought? I want to thank everyone for coming on the show. Mary, Dan, it's been a great show. The dark web of nations, foreign and domestic issues as we begin this year. I look forward to more discussions on the topics, and there's just so much happening. But thanks to you both, and thanks to everyone for joining us on In the Lion's Den today. Take care.
Thank you.
Blue lights and sirens, yeah, it's time to go. No time to defund us. You should know that we're not perfect. We're human, we're flawed. Just say to some grace for the sake of us all. We're holding